This deck is being fitted with PVC covers supplied by Clonmel Covers. Today we're going to show you how to fit these covers yourself after we supply them to you. As you can see, some of the covers have already been fitted, but we're going to fit this center panel today for the purposes of this demonstration. You'll need several tools: a measuring tape, a carpenter's staple gun, some stainless steel screws and washers about 2 inches long, some scissors, an electric screwdriver drill, a good sharp saw to allow you make clean cuts in timber, a roll of PVC that will be used for covering a timber batten to weatherproof it, of course the panel itself, which is rolled up here on the ground, and then a timber batten which is used to secure the panel in place. Now, regarding staples, we like to use 2 different sizes of staples. For covering the batten with PVC, we use 10mm staples typically, and for attaching the panel onto the framework of your deck, we use 12mm staples, but it's not essential. You can use a single staple size for everything if you prefer that. I'm going to hand you over now to our master fitter Seamus, and he'll lead you through the procedure.
Okay, the first stage is you have your timber batten here. You have your roll of PVC pre-cut to the width you need it. You have your staple gun with 10mm staples that I prefer to use to secure the PVC to the batten. First step, and very important, leave the PVC extend out 3 to 4 inches beyond the timber. Start your PVC at the edge of the timber and put in your staple. Unroll your PVC, full length of the batten. Go back to the beginning, keeping your PVC close to the edge, and roughly every 200mm fit a staple. Once you have all your staples in, get your scissors, trim off the PVC to the exact length of the timber. Go back to the beginning where you started. What you're trying to achieve here now is to keep the PVC nice and snug around the timber. So you roll the timber, keeping pressure on the PVC, nice and tight. And again, back near the top of the timber, start your first staples. As you move along, I like to twist the PVC nice and snug onto the batten. And again, every roughly 200mm, put in another staple. It's worth your while putting some effort into doing this neatly, because it'll be very visible the front of your panels when everything is completed. It's also worth noting this is easier to do on a warm day because the PVC is more pliable. Very important to this process, what we need to try and do is protect the timber from rainwater getting into it. So what we will do is we will cut the PVC in a certain way and fold it back down over, so we're sealing the timber. It'll be left open on the bottom. If rain does get in, it has somewhere to get out. So our first cut is in line with this corner here. The next cut is in line with this corner here. turn it over. The next cut is in line with this corner here. And the next cut is in line with this corner here. We come slightly above the top of the timber at the back of the piece, and we leave about a ½ inch of PVC extra.
Hang on now, let's get a shot of that. Okay.
That leaves us front piece and 2 long side pieces. What we do then is we leave about 1.5 inches from the top of the timber on one side and 1.5 inches from the top of the timber on the other side. What happens next is then we fold the back PVC down. We can put a staple in that if we want, and that keeps that in place. Then we fold in one side, then we fold in the other side. Again, we can put another staple in that to secure it, and then we turn what is the front over the top, down the back, and we put 4 staples in that. That completely seals the top of the timber, stops any rainwater getting into the timber. Once you have completed sealing the top of the timber, the next stage is we need to pre-drill screw holes, and it helps to secure the batten. So you would measure out normally 50 mil down roughly from the top, and roughly about every 300 mil down along. I prefer to use 60 mil stainless steel screws, not supplied. So by using these you'll never have any rust on your cover. So by pre-drilling, it makes it very easy for installation later on. So I use a cordless drill with 4mm bit and drill through. And this makes for very easy installation of the screws. It also helps to secure the batten against the framework. And what you're trying to achieve is to get the batten as tight to the framework as you can, which squeezes the PVC panel between the timber batten and the frame. This is the way the panel will arrive to you, covered in maybe a plastic or something. It is probably a good idea to put some protective film on the ground in case there's any bit of a stone or anything like that, and literally just to keep your panels clean. Once you roll out the panels, don't walk on them. At the very minimum you'll end up with footprints on them, but you could puncture the PVC. So protective film down first is always a good idea. Once you open out the panels, there's an extra layer of PVC which is actually the cutout from the window. This can be discarded or whatever purpose you want to put, but it has not anything to do with the panels themselves. It's just protected in transportation. So we have our panel. The loop is at the bottom of the panel, where eventually you will insert the batten into this, which helps to keep everything nice and straight when you roll it up. The next stage in this, if there is a zips in your panel, some panels will have zips and some panels won't. If there is a zip in the panel, it means the loop at the bottom of the panel is actually sealed at both ends. We need to insert this batten into that loop, and what this does, as we roll up the panel, it helps to keep the panel nice and straight. So to insert this, we need to put a slot and in the loop at the back of the panel, about 50mm in from the edge. Obviously, you need to be very careful that you only cut the loop at the back of the panel. And you take your batten, slide it in past the cut mark, and then push it back slightly. So what this gives you is a straight edge that helps to roll the panel nice and snugly. The next stage is securing the panel to the framework. Take your panel, try not to crease it as you're moving around. Sometimes this can be easier if you've something else to help you. Get your panel roughly in position. Don't worry too much about getting this exactly where it needs to be. This is just to give you a guide. It can be moved again if need be. And what you're trying to achieve here, we have allowed on a 4-inch pillar a 3-inch overlap, and the reason for that is that we'll have a 50mm batten running down the centre of that timber post. These staples are only to hold the panel in place while you eventually fit your battens. And what will happen when you fit the batten is you're squeezing this panel here between the outside batten and this timber, and that's what keeps the panel securely in place. So I'm going to put a staple here. I know my height is right because of this. You might not always have this, so you need to make sure your height is right. If you have multiple panels, you might want to put up a few panels and make sure your window line is running evenly all along. So just a few staples along the top, and that'll give us a guide. We can check down here, are we right height wise, which is perfect on this. We can also look inside. And what we want to check here is the distance from the zip to the panel, which there is roughly about 20mm. And I can see, looking at this, the space between the pillar and the zip is 50mm. So I'm too far over this way. This is why we only put in a few panels, a few staples to begin with, so that we can pull them out, mark where the panel is, and we'll just shift it maybe 20mm to the right. Right, I know I need to move this panel about 20mm to my left hand side. So I'll mark where the panel is now. I will remove the panel. Make sure any staples that are left in, you get out. Sometimes the staples, when you pull, they'll stay in. Make sure you remove those. Do not throw them on the ground, put them somewhere safe because you could stand on them. Again, I need to come back, again like from the start. I see my mark. I'm going moving about 20mm to my left hand side. Again, a staple there. Pull the cover taut to your left. Remove the last staple. Again, make sure it's not in the timber or in your PVC. Put it somewhere safe. And again, put in a staple. Again, now we'll check on the inside to see is our zips and window in the center of the frame. So I have about 30 millimeters there, and I have about 30 millimeters there. Check the bottom as well. 30 millimeters and 30 millimeters, and you can visually just check that's running parallel. Your window height 110 millimeters, 110 millimeters. So all that looks pretty good. Alright, we know our panel is centered, so now we have to put in some more staples to help secure it in place. Starting along the top, roughly every 200 mil or so. More if you feel you need it. And that secures along the top. Because we're using 12 millimeter staples, they don't always drive all the way home. A little tap of hammer again helps secure the PVC. Next stage is we want to work our way from the top down. Normally I will, with every 200 mil again, I will put in 1, 2 staples, 3 maybe on one side, and then on the opposite side with a little bit of tension on the cover, not anything great. This helps to take the flutter out of the panel. Again, I choose 2 on the left, 2 on the right. Left, and again keeping a little bit of tension each time you do it. Do not put all the staples on one side and then the other side. It'll end up pulling the panel. 1 or 2 each side. All the time a little bit of tension. This is a job that's always good to do on a warm day. The panel is nice and soft and easy to work with. Again, a little bit of tension each time, nothing major. You don't want to put pressure on the zips. Again, staples don't always drive all the way through. So a little tap. Right, we have our panel in place. The next step is we need to put this batten over the staples, and this will help again extra secures the panel onto the framework. We will need a batten running across the top, but we cannot fit this until all our panels are in place. So we will use a small spacer to give us the right distance down from the top. We have a cut edge here which we want to cover with our batten. So we can just cover that. We have our distance down from the top. And we screw in. When this is finished, it should run parallel with the stitching in the zips, and it should be more or less in the centre of our timber framework inside. And again, because these are pre-drilled, it makes the batten tight against the framework, squeezing the panel between the two timbers. This is what you want to achieve. Again, you might need to bend the batten in and out a little bit as you go down along. That's that batten secured. We have a batten for the other side. You may or you may not have another panel beside it. If you don't, you would bring your batten to the edge of the timber, covering the screws, come down your 50mm from the top again, keeping your timber nice and flush down the edge. And continue on with the rest of the screws. Okay, when all our panels on one face are fitted, we have our uprights in place. We have to put a piece across the top of the panels. This can be done in one length, it can be done in individual pieces. Every situation is different. For me this time, I have one length. And remember, I kept my battens down and I've left clearance for my batten to go overhead. I have it pre-drilled as the upright battens. With that in place, again, my pre-drilled, and I screw in my stainless steel screws, and that completes the job. It is worth your while taking your time doing this. You will be looking at it for years to come, hopefully. A good day with less wind, it is easier to manage. Take your time, double check your measurements from outside and inside. You cannot measure enough. It'll be worth it in the long run. Enjoy the panels from Clonmel Covers.